Time has come once again for what? Oh, to speak as co-creators in Magic Do. I'm Daniel Dubois.
I'm Michaela Gaffin Stone, and we are your guides on your journey into the heart of the primordial.
Welcome to season 7, episode 8. It's all about what we're about to do. That's the
Which tells
title.
you we have no idea what we're about to say, but
Right,
what's new? What's new?
right. Actually, so much so that Michaela took over for me. That was good.
That was funny. I don't usually get the opportunity to jump in on that one, and
Right.
which is absolutely fine, but that was just funny. Couldn't
Yeah, I
resist.
had both. I had both openings at the same time there, the old one and the new one. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
wait, which one am I doing?
Oh, sounds like a Hecate
Mm,
crossroads kind of thing.
yeah. Actually, it's interesting that you say that because today I've been listening, or not today. Yesterday I was reading someone had posted that Hecate had showed up as a different goddess to them, and everyone in
Oh.
the comment section was just like, "Well, some are like, well, the manifestation that depends on you," and then the rest were like, "Well, then you must have like a lesser, trickster coming up to you and try." All right, so they were trying to tell the person, well, maybe Hecate is not showing up, and it's a trickster showing up, or some kind of negative spirit trying to get in the way. And so I just kind of jumped off the thread and I was like, yeah, whatever, you know, because I'm starting to, given the relationship we've built over this year with all the spirits we work with, I'm like, I can't read anyone else's experiences.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it's you kind of step out of that place where you're looking for other people's
Mm,
input because you're in your own.
right.
You're doing your own thing, and it kind of dilutes what you're looking at, I think.
Right. Well, it kind of reading what other people are doing, at least, in their day-to-day practices, well, I mean, I don't think this really should be a surprise, but it kind of makes me think like we're getting like a really different experience than everyone else because of what we're doing here.
Could be, could be. I mean, I don't spend any time
Mm,
actually thinking about what anybody else is experiencing, simply because we all have our different focus to look at.
yes.
And what I have
Mm,
noticed is a lot of people are working on shadow work right now. I've seen it everywhere from
mm,
Jungian platforms to practicing witches. Shadow work is all over the
mm,
place. And that seems to be very up and central in certainly the things I get to see, the things that come past my eyes, because we have to remember,
yeah.
when you're looking on the internet at
Mm,
anything, whether it's social media or otherwise, the powers that be, the algorithms and what have
yes.
you are controlling what you see. I mean, if you
Right.
mention sneakers and you mention a particular brand, you can bet that half an hour to an hour later, you're going to start seeing a whole load of advertisements for, that particular brand and things like it.
Yeah.
So maybe the shadow work comes up because that's what I'm looking at a lot.
Well, no, I'm getting that too.
Yeah.
Although it
Okay.
could be the same thing, but for the same reason. But I'm seeing even like in secular spaces, yeah, it's showing.
Mm. Yeah, I was interested to see a course with the Jungian platform
Mm,
that's coming up that's about shadow work.
right.
Uh, so, yeah, that is interesting. So maybe the listener is also looking into shadow work, and if so, or if you're afraid of it, that's probably the biggest point. If you're afraid of shadow work, that's a really good sign that you need to do some, like a
That's
whole lot
true.
of it, because you're
Yeah,
only afraid of what you don't know. You're afraid of what you haven't looked at, the thing that's hiding under the bed. It's not a monster, it's your shadow work.
right.
And if you sort of get your tools out and you have your flashlight and you have a look under the bed and you look at that shadow work and get going on it, it ceases to be a shadow.
Yeah. No, that's true, right? Because the only reason it's your shadow is because you're neglecting it.
Yeah,
That's the only thing that
exactly.
makes it your shadow, what you don't shed
And
light on.
and just like any experience you have in life, I was talking with somebody
Mm,
the other day, yesterday, who I was coaching on this. If you're having experiences or you've had experiences that are really awful and you wonder, like, why did I get that? What the hell? Why was that happening to me? It's not fair, etc., etc. The second you find yourself with that it's not fair narrative, I would like you to kind of skid to a halt, put a pin in that and stop for a minute. That's your doorway, that's your
right,
portal to shadow work, because there's no such thing as it's fair, it's not fair. This is a
right,
made up concept. What is fair and not fair? That's crazy. It's subjective, it's unmeasurable, and it can vary depending on your mood, right? It doesn't actually exist. So if you're focused on experiences that are not fair, excellent. Go look at those things.
right,
I have a thing for you to consider, which is if we have a soul, a spirit, and we are bigger than these bodies, we are more than this, we exist in the spirit realm, which, frankly, if you're listening
mm,
to this, we're all on the same page with that, right?
right,
So I would propose to you that your human design is your blueprint. This is how you're going to operate in the world, how you're going to respond to things, what flows for you. So that's your manual for being here. But then you have soul contracts and you have lessons that you want to learn when you come to this planet. That's the whole point of coming here is it's school. It's
mm,
learning. Sometimes the lesson you need to learn is such that you can't do it on your own. Most of them, in fact, you can't do on your own. You need interaction from somebody else. And sometimes that interaction is going to be awful. It's going to be horrendous. They're going to do terrible things to you. And that can happen, right? Especially childhood traumas, think of abuse, whatever else, all those kind of things. Think of it this way for a moment. The person who's doing that, you have a contract with them. They love you enough to agree to come and do these terrible things so that you can have that experience. Now, hold with me for a minute for anybody that's getting all, upset and het up and everything. I'm not saying this makes them a wonderful person. What I'm saying is that was an experience that you required so much that you wanted some other soul to put themselves in jeopardy to do it because they're going to have to deal with their shit, right? They did stuff that
mm,
is unbalanced, that is negative, that is problematic. They are going to have to deal with that. That is a lesson for them also. But when you've had those kind of experiences, instead of saying, it's not fair, that was terrible, I'm suffering now because of da 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 da. Okay, fine. Give that lot a seat for a minute and just look at the experience you had. What was your lesson? What can you learn from that? Because if you aren't learning from those experiences, then you're wasting your bloody time and you're missing the point. The point of those things is to learn, to get the lesson. And if you can see that somebody else came to give you that lesson, to give you what you needed to get that wisdom, then it kind of behooves you to go get that wisdom, right? Work on it. What can you get out of that? And it's, the whole thing of, well, do I forgive this person?
mm,
Do I not? I'm always going to say you let it go, right?
yeah,
Let it go that this thing happened. Because if you don't let it go, the only person that's suffering, the only person that's carrying the crap is you. Why would you do that to yourself? Just put it down. That was then. This is now. What did you learn? That is the key. That is your shadow work. That is the whole thing of dive into that and just, okay, like I had an unsafe childhood. This is not
Mhm.
news. This is not a shock, right? What
Right.
did I learn from that though? I can read people's behaviors really, really well. I can read facial expressions, body language. Like I am damn good at that. Why? Because I learned it since before I could speak. I've been doing it forever. Was my experience worth it? Well, I needed the lesson. I needed what I had in order to be who I am now. So was it worth it? It must have been. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it, right? It wouldn't have been
Right.
set up that way. Have I learned the lessons? I'm hoping I've learned all of them. I don't know. I've learned as many as I can learn, and maybe I'll keep learning because you can unravel, you can follow the thread back to the events and still find more wisdom there. So it's not in the event itself, it's in what you do with it.
Yes.
That's the key. So we've mentioned victimhood before now,
Mm,
and blame and shame and all of
mm.
that. If you're in the blame shame game, you are missing the point. It's immaterial. It doesn't matter. It totally doesn't matter. So if you can just put that stuff down, take a deep breath and say, you know what, 2026, I'm all about shadow work. I am going to figure out what the lessons were. I am going to learn about the responses I have that I don't like and the ones I do, the reactions, like where do they come from? What do I want to do with them differently? There's so much you can learn that this is a fabulous opportunity. And the thing with opportunity is it lies the other side of what you fear.
Right.
So there was a whole load of channeling for you.
Yeah. I figured you hit right on there and you just kept going. I was like, all right, perfect. This is good. But it's true, right? Yeah, shedding, like we've discussed it before, the need to forgive means you're still weighted down by that problem, by whatever happened, the event that happened. You haven't, it hasn't dissolved, or it hasn't, you haven't learned those lessons in it because it hasn't become, I want to say irrelevant to you, but that, I don't know if that's the proper word. You still give it weight,
Well, you haven't integrated the
right?
wisdom. You're hanging on to the event and the conduit for the
Yes,
event,
that's
if
the
you
one.
will. And it's missing the point. That's totally not helpful. And while we're on the subject of forgiveness, a little more
Hmm.
download coming, is typically when you have been the recipient of abuse or some sort of oppression in some way, typically, check this out. The person you need to truly forgive is yourself.
Yes.
You have to forgive yourself for surviving it. Because often, weirdly, it may seem, there is a survivor's guilt. Like,
Hmm.
why am I still here? This was so bad, I shouldn't be here. There's a whole lot of strangeness about that, and we bury it because it's confusing. We
Right.
don't look at that. Like, that's just weird, man. Why am I upset with myself for surviving? Great, there's another door for you. Go through it and have a look, right? But the person you need to forgive is yourself for your responses, for doing whatever you needed to do to get through that experience, for you being how you were in that moment. Whatever you
Mm.
did that causes you to feel shame, whatever you experience that causes you to feel shame, and then maybe deflect to blame, all of these areas are very rich for shadow work. But
Right.
forgive yourself first.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to use a cinematic. I'm going to use a movie as an example. So I don't know how many people have seen the movie Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer.
I've
It did
read the
get released
book.
in the theaters.
I've read the book.
Oh, did you? I don't know if
Yeah.
the book has the same line in it, but when his mentor, that vampire there, the, the unrevealed vampire who taught him, that was the lesson he taught him. He was in the movie. It's set up. He's got his axe and he's hitting a tree, and he says to Abraham Lincoln, he says, "What's really bothering you?" And he's like, "I couldn't, they took my mother. They took my mother." And he's like, "That's not what's bothering you." And then he kind of pushed him, right? What's really bugging you? He says, I couldn't save my mother, as in
Uh-huh.
it's my shame. And then once he revealed that, he was able to actually cut the tree down in one shot.
Right. Okay, I don't remember that bit, but yes, exactly that.
Well, it
It's
stood
like,
out to me because of that, because that's some serious shadow work, right? Because it
mhm,
seems it's at the moment I was kind of conflicted with that idea of so we don't care about anyone else, right? We only care about ourselves. So the only reason he had no power was because he was ashamed of himself, not because his mom died and that traumatized him, although two things can be true at once.
yep,
But that, but then later after, I was like, no, well, but this is true, right? Why wouldn't he be mad at himself for not being able to fix the situation? Because that's the ultimate feeling of powerlessness. And that
right.
carries you on through your life if you don't feel like you have the power to do something.
That's key. The powerlessness is key. And what do we do when we feel powerless? We give away what little bit of power we have by
Right?
blaming somebody else.
Yes.
It's exactly the incorrect thing to do in
Mm,
that moment. And this is where shadow work jumps up and says, Yo, I'm right here. Would you care to do something? We got to do some work here because while you're avoiding that and running from it, it's just kind of, it's like your shadow, quite literally. Wherever you go, there it is. It's
yeah.
always there. It's not going to disappear because you ignore it. So shadow work is, I think, a big theme in 2026. Like you got to
Mm,
get your shit together, and this is the best way to do it. Shadow work, 100%.
right.
Um, I mean, I'm putting together a summit right now
Hmm.
that is all about self-care for witches, and it's going to be very deep and wide-ranging. And it's time to go deep. It's time to get these different perspectives, including shadow work.
Right.
I already have a second summit planned, and it's going to be Witch's Rage.
No.
And it's turning rage into action.
Mm.
And you need to do shadow work to be able to do this.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because going on what you said earlier, so this week, I've been doing like double spell duty. Not every day. Today, I'm having a day off from it. But the last couple of days, or the last few days, I've been doing two spells, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Sort of one of bringing something out and then the other one calibrating. So, and yesterday, I think Lilith, Mary Magdalene, I know I mentioned this one, the Life Fairy. I don't know if there's another name. No, sorry, not the, yes. But also, and this is a new one for me, but the spirit known as the Lady of Fine,
I
another
don't know that
fairy.
one.
The
Okay.
lady, the Lady of Fine.
Lady of
I
Fine.
couldn't
Hmm.
find anything on her. Although, she's a fairy and everything kind of the guest of, well, you must be looking for a fairy. So anyway, and then Mary Magdalene and then Gaia.
Hmm.
And the big thing we did was it's not about revenge, like we had discussed before, but
Hmm.
they were really pushing it yesterday, like in the magic, in the work I've been doing in the calibration magic. It's about putting grievances aside. I know we've mentioned this before on the podcast, but they were really, really insistent when we were doing the magic yesterday about that.
Well,
Like,
grievances just suck your energy.
right, the
It
divine
really,
feminine, yeah, because basically the divine feminine has to take dominance this year
yes, it is taking dominance,
because and oh,
whether it's
right,
welcomed or not, it is.
yeah, and this is the other thing too. Yesterday when I was, I guess communing would be a good word for it. The Like I had said before, right? The divine masculine has been abused. Well, there's
Yes.
consequences to the divine feminine when that happens. And so the reason the divine feminine is going into dominance because the divine masculine needs a break and needs to heal.
It also needs to do its shadow work
Right.
because the divine masculine has been abused by
Mhm.
masculine as much as anything. It's the whole patriarchy system that has been in place for centuries has abused itself and the divine masculine. Like it has captured it and made it small, kept it in a little box kind of thing. So it's not just for clarity for the listener, we're not saying divine feminine did this to divine masculine, da da da. This is not a battle of the sexes. This is
Right.
not any of this stuff. Because that too is an illusion. It's not true. It doesn't need to be that way. It's not meant to be that way. But divisiveness is a way for power seeking to
Right.
sneak in, and those who would use power will take it and run with it. You know, it suits them. And typically, those people are the ones that need to do the most shadow work of all, because that need for power is unnatural. It's unnecessary.
Right.
You don't need power in order to control other people. Your power is so you can realize yourself fully. That's what your power is for. We get very distracted by getting revenge and vengeance and
Mm.
I'm going to get you back and payback time and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, God's teeth. You're just throwing your energy away. You're just putting it in a bottomless pit. And the bottomless pit feeds
Right.
on this and creates more of what you're feeding. So, that vengeance thing, it's not a weakness to not seek vengeance. It's a
Right.
strength because you're keeping your energy for much better things.
Right. And that's the thing, right? The I don't know if I'm going to word this right. So the greatest strength that can be shown right now by the divine feminine is the ability to nurture the divine masculine back to health, to its proper health right now. That does like it's not a question of subservience, it's a question of like we've had this discussion, right? Especially when Babylon came on, that it's not a position of weakness to create a space. And Babylon is, in fact, one of the most knowledgeable spirits in the universe in her story because she made space. And
Mhm.
that's kind of the ask right now of the divine feminine.
One of the many asks, because
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. There's destruction and creation.
Hmm.
And I'm very much in that flow. That
Yeah.
is for me, that's what I'm called toward.
Right.
That's hence all
Monday.
the chaos of
Yes.
bio that I've been having for however long.
Yes. Monday, Lilith, Baba Yaga, and the fairy, the life fairy. We also had a kind of a, well, we did magic based on that as well. And also calling that up and calibrating it. And it was a kind of a, for me, it was a lesson in just what kind of destruction the divine feminine can bring.
All of it.
Right. So, yes,
Total.
because the, well, I'm going to say this. One, because it's being pushed. Okay, I'm just going to get ready. I want to make sure I get this right because this is going to be very important and very fun to navigate. I'm just trying to figure out who wants to take this one because I'm not wording this as a male. All right. Know that it is. Even she doesn't got it. So the divine feminine has to step up now, because she stepped back when she was needed. It was a crucial. All right. I had to take a moment there while it's collecting her stuff because this is actually going to be a big one. Once we start going there, some of you might feel called out, and it's not about calling you out because this goes back a long, 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 long time. We're talking like probably not even anything recorded that we have access to a long time ago. So for the masculine, like this is not about saying anyone's at fault. It's going to feel like it, but it's not to say that anyone's at fault because the divine masculine allowed itself to be abused. So There is no removing. Like we all play our part when things happen, and that's the point. We all play our part. The divine masculine ascended in a bad way because decisions were made and decisions weren't made on the masculine, divine masculine side for those who wield the divine masculine predominantly. But this also means on the side of the divine feminine, the primary wielders of the divine feminine also didn't make decisions or made decisions. Sort of like when women gave up comfort instead of taking the freedom and the hard one to describe, right? Because, but when freedom was given up for comfort and safety, a certain amount of power was lost. And when the divine masculine offered safety at the expense of freedom, a certain amount of power was lost.
I have to jump in there and
Go
say
ahead.
it was a lie as well. The safety wasn't safe.
Right.
There has never been safety under a patriarchal rule, which is what we're talking about here with the abuse. So there
Right.
was no safety for women, certainly, none. And for the men, there was a lot of pressure to be a certain way, even if that was
Right.
not your natural flow. So, which is still the case, right? Men
Right.
still have this
And it's
pressure.
being reinforced now even more again. Like that's
Yeah,
the whole gambit.
you have this pressure to be, an alpha male.
Mm,
Like that cracks me up because typically speaking, the guys who, present themselves as alpha male don't even struggle up to beta. Like it's
right.
seriously not. You're more like an Amiga or something. It's
Mm,
it's not. This isn't a thing. That's also the point. It is an illusion. It's
right.
unnecessary. It's taking you away from the point. And Buddhism comes to mind right now.
All right.
When the Buddha was meditating under the Bodhi tree, he was so close to enlightenment. And Mara, which is the temptation, the
Mhm.
Christians would say the devil. It's not really a good comparison, but close enough for the purposes of what I'm saying. So Mara wanted to distract the Buddha from his path to enlightenment because he was so close. So he sent his five gorgeous daughters to come and distract him and lure him away and prevent the enlightenment from happening. Now, that is a story that is what, 3,000 years old?
Mm,
And still, it's let me distract you from your purpose. It's basically what's being said. If you attain enlightenment, you're reaching ultimate power. I can't have you have that power. My power is to distract you. There's stories like that everywhere. If you take the Christian story of Jesus in the desert
mm. 40
being
days, 40 nights.
tempted,
Yeah.
yeah, the whole temptation thing. This is to tempt you away from your purpose. And so many mythologies and stories have this. Usually they blame women for the
Mm,
temptation away, but not always. Usually, though, it's because this is the mode that the governing patriarchy will take is, oh, it's women's fault, it's women's fault. And this does it subjects the women to oppression, but it also distracts the men from their true purpose. So
right.
nobody's getting ahead. Nobody is focusing on the things they need to focus on. And the thing with masculine, feminine energy, we are all both.
Right.
We are all, when you go to the source, when you look at who you were before you came to this planet, your soul is not male. Your soul is not female. It is other
Mm,
than that. So we embody a certain aspect when we're on this planet. And that's also, if you think of people who are trans, for example, they arrived in a body with a different energy, if you will. And they then have a whole chunk of life, however long it takes them, to sort of move from the body they arrived in to the one they want if they go through
mm.
the transition. it's a mismatch. Who they are doesn't match the body they're in. Is that such a
Right.
shock that that happens? Look at how many billion people are on the planet.
Mm.
Of course, that sometimes happens. And of course, you have this is an experience you need for some reason. How do
Right.
I become me against all the odds? How do I become what I came to be? And for somebody going through a transition, they can tell you it's a big thing. It's like you don't do that for the hell of it. It's not funsies, right? We're in an environment where that's like the third level, if you will. Men, women, and then trans have a harder time than women because now you don't fit in either camp in the way traditional patriarchy
Mm.
would have you, and it becomes problematic. So, wow, did you set yourself up for a lesson there, right? But the whole point being, our soul isn't all this or all that. So why would we fight about it here?
Right.
I don't feel that that is a necessary battle on this planet unless it is artificially created so. And that's what's been happening. This is the sort of dispute of who has the power and who's the natural leader and all this shit
Mm.
it's artificial, it's nonsense. We
Well,
don't
that's
need
the
that.
thing, right? Because we tend towards finding a balance. Now, that doesn't mean, right? It's the asymmetric balance because we've discussed balance before, right? Balance doesn't mean everyone is sitting there on a level playing field and nothing ever shifts or changes. It just goes where it needs to go at the time, right? And then it comes back to a
Perhaps
center.
harmony is a good word for
Yes,
that.
right.
Harmony.
And what's happened, because you always have people gaming the system. It's part of testing the system, even just naturally, if you want to look at it that way. And so the people who the inclination to game the system took us out of balance.
Yes. Because it serves them in the immediate future to do so. If you
Right.
look at communism, for example,
Hmm.
communism is brilliant on paper. Like, I will die on that hill.
Hmm.
Communism is excellent on paper. The problem is when you apply it to people,
Hmm.
because exactly what you just said, somebody is going to game the system. They're going to look at that and say, oh, this is amazing. If everybody does this, I can, and they
Right.
see how they can step in and they can pull all that power in for themselves and
Right.
have the minions do the work. It only works if everybody agrees that that is how it works. And being people, we don't. So
Right.
communism is fantastic on paper, but it's absolutely disastrous when it's applied to human beings.
Yes. And it's funny because I'm only saying this because I know people are bombarded with the opposite message. We have yet to have communism on this planet.
Well, you can't get it because people go and screw it up before it gets very far.
Right. The whole thing of how you know, and I'll tell you the exact, here's your litmus test. If the country has a name and a central government, it's not communism. It's literally
Right.
not communism because the primary feature of communism is there is no central government. You don't actually technically have a country because you're a bunch of individual communes. So if someone says this country is communist, you automatically know they're wrong. You just automatically know it.
The closest I've
Yeah.
come across, and funnily enough, it doesn't call itself communism,
Hmm.
which is even funnier, but
Right.
also accurate, is when you look at a kibbutz in
Mm-hmm.
Israel, the kibbutzim, they are a collective and
Mm-hmm.
everybody works at their part
Mm-hmm.
so that the whole can enjoy all the fruits
Right.
of everybody's labors, right? So it's not an easy environment, and everybody has to pull their weight. They have to do their contribution. And the key here, too, is nothing is assigned a greater importance than another thing. They're all
Right.
important. You need all of them, or you wouldn't be doing them. And everybody gets a say in how things are going. So that is the closest thing to actual communism I've
Right.
seen. And I haven't met one person on a kibbutz that would tell you that they use communism. Not one.
Right.
It's collectivism, which really is communism. But
Yeah.
that's the only place I've seen it. And the kibbutz is not that big. It's not a country. You can't
Right.
have. I have not seen a country like that because you can't have leaders and communism and leaders who are truly invested in what they're doing. Like none of it works.
Right.
It only works on paper. So if you had robots that were
Mm,
appropriately programmed and not given any independent, any abilities to
mm,
develop processes itself, it's a long shot, but communism can't really
right.
work.
Well, and like, and the system, the way it is now, it's already built in that you can't have communism because the way pretty much, and I don't need to name names, you automatically know the minute somebody gets close to communism. I mean, you don't even have to get close. You just have to smell like communism, frankly. And there's an attack and there's an attempt to undermine you. There's an attempt to destroy your whole infrastructure. Like it exists. It's constant. It's
Mhm.
so we've never had
Yeah.
communism. That's the important lesson. Always remember that. We've never had communism. Like it's never happened. Anyone who tells you otherwise, you know automatically are wrong because they're naming a country. So they're automatically wrong. And they're blaming a central government. They're naming central figures. It's done. That's not communism.
Again, it's an illusion
Yeah.
that's used to control people. And this is, I think, something that we're at time now to wake up to those illusions,
Right.
where there are so many places where we're sort of given this thing that we structure our lives around, and it's untrue. It's not true. Men are not superior to women. They
Mm,
don't have the ultimate power. Communism doesn't really exist. It's there are powerful people because they took the power for themselves
right.
who use that as a stick to beat everybody with. But it's not true. Capitalism,
Mm,
bullshit. It's not capitalism at all. Capitalism is, the idea of everybody making money and everybody
mm,
being able to progress and live their
mm,
lives and improve things. Really? Really? Pick a country and tell me you don't have poor people. Pick a
yeah.
country and tell me there aren't people on the street who have nothing. If capitalism works, nobody needs to be in that place. If
Right.
capitalism truly works, you don't have a few billionaires who are screwing over the rest of the country.
Right. One person
So,
doesn't have the wealth of 50% of the lowest earners.
right. And you don't have slums backed up to mansions.
Right.
That is not a thing. And yet, find me a place where that doesn't exist.
Hmm.
I'd be very interested to see it.
Well, you need the human shields.
Right? I
It
mean,
was
it's just
actually it was a discussion brought up. My brother-in-law is American. Actually, my brother-in-law is exceedingly famous. Okay. Yeah, so discussing with my brother-in-law, like in the States, I don't know where else it is. I know for the most part, like I think it's almost unique to the States. There's a right side of the track and a wrong side of the track,
definitely.
right? But what I understand for most countries, and this very much where I live, anyways, it's almost I like to characterize it like as in Operation Human Shield, whereas in like you'll have all these lower income neighborhoods, but they surround the higher income neighborhoods. So almost like if someone ever raided the village, right? You have to go through the poor people first.
I was going to say, think of a castle and its
Yeah.
moat.
Yes.
The
As I was
fancy
saying it, that was
dancy,
coming to mind. Yeah.
yeah, the fancy dancy people are inside and they're protected by the poor buggers outside whose lives matter less. Why? Because somebody said so and they believed it. So this illusion that we have all around us, it exists because people aren't doing their shadow work.
Right.
We're not looking at the lies we're told, and we're not looking at our part in believing them. And we have to take that back. We have to take that power back. And the path to doing that is your shadow work. I mean, we're literally giving you the guidebook today, people.
Right.
This is it. Shadow work. Where is your shadow work? Wherever you don't want to look, whatever you don't want to examine. If you think that your beliefs are bang on and you know everything and you've got it sorted, okay, start right there. Because
Right.
believing everything you think is the first mistake. Believing everything you're told is another one
Yeah.
of equal
Well,
magnitude.
and we had made the analogy of the game Kerplunk, so Michaela just pulled a very important, uh, we'll call it a stick out of it. I don't know if it's called skewers or whatever in the game. So this is the important thing because this is the important thing about the unbalance in the divine masculine and divine feminine, and it's something that essentially the wielders of the divine feminine are falling for over and over and over again. And I'm going to point out a few things, and it's going to shock a few people. One, women have had universal suffrage before men, which is important to remember. In other words, whereas a certain group of men have had control and the right to vote in a democracy, that was never all men. And women typically got the right to vote universally before all men did. Look at the States. You still have to sign up for the draft before you're allowed to vote. So women have universal suffrage in the States before men do, because men still don't have universal suffrage in the United States because there's still conditions on their voting. Not like you became a felon and you can't vote, but just to have the right in the first place, men
Okay,
still
got to
have
jump in
conditions
and
on it.
say
Right,
you can be a felon and be the president of the
right,
United States. So,
yes,
yeah, that's clearly not a barrier.
right. But it is a barrier to voting. But these are little things that are sliding past the psyche, which are making it difficult for the divine feminine to take its role right now.
Well, the divine feminine,
Yeah,
or at least the embodiment on the planet, women,
right.
right? Women are their own worst enemy, which is exactly what I said earlier for men.
Mm,
The
right,
ones who are oppressing men are the men. The ones
right.
who are oppressing women right now. Look at who is in charge in the US. You have someone with dementia sundowning away like a champion, right? That just can't put coherent thoughts together. So clearly that is not the person who's actually in charge. Let's take all the pretense away from that. So who's pulling the strings and
Right.
who is in charge of some of the worst aspects of government right now? There are women.
Mm.
Women are at the head of an awful lot of destruction that's not a helpful or a necessary destruction, but a distracting destruction. They are Mara in action, and it's
Right.
women doing it.
That's that was the tricky part, right? To get to that. Because if you look at history, uh, I think it's I know okay, so I know it was in Europe, but I don't know if it was in England specifically. But and I don't remember what the women were called specifically, but they used to hand out feathers, white feathers
Mm,
or something like that, to the men who
yeah,
wouldn't enlist.
yeah.
That's women actively participating in this disruption because they would give it to the guys who didn't enlist so that they would mark them as, cowards and
Hmm.
disloyal. So what because of what we're doing, because like okay, this is how important this is that we are going to go with this with a fine-tooth comb basically right now. This is what the Dark Mothers are asking for. This is what they've been asking me for all week. Is this idea that if you wield the divine feminine, be you masculine or be you a man or a woman or whatever, your job is not to add to the abuse because you have grievances. Because it's those grievances that have allowed manipulation.
Hmm.
If you say like, oh well, men have all the power, but then you see all the homeless men, obviously they have no power. Like, come on, like there's, you know,
It's an illusion again.
right? And
I keep using this because
yeah,
I can't, the words aren't adequate. Funnily enough, this is interesting that they're not adequate,
right.
but words aren't adequate to explain how this hologram, if you think of being on um, Star Trek, right?
Hmm.
You've got your holographic
Yeah, you're in
deck.
the holodeck. Yeah.
You're on the holodeck and you've got all this scene going on, and it's so real until it isn't. We are at the
Mm-hmm.
point right now where that button needs to be pressed or the computer
Mm-hmm.
needs to be told to
Right.
turn off because we've just discovered we're on a holodeck. This
Right.
isn't true. It's not real. And the women who are wielding power right now are
Mm-hmm.
doing so many savage abuses with it. I'm almost ashamed to have them called women, because they are the polar opposite of what we need to be doing right now. But isn't that always the case? As you fight a battle that is worth winning, you will have people who you would think would be on your side fighting you harder.
Right.
they'll fight back harder. And we have this everywhere. Look at in Iran right now.
Mm,
These people who claim themselves to be revolutionaries and here for the good of the country, etc., are slaughtering their own people as we speak. They are doing unspeakable evil things. They truly are. Well, how did we arrive at that? Them being revolutionary and all.
mm,
The power corrupts. They were corrupt when they took the power. They
right,
hold it. They hold it for corrupt reasons.
right,
It's not what they said it was. It was an illusion. And we keep suffering from the illusions that we buy into.
right. And that's
Shadow
why,
work, shadow
yes,
work is your flashlight.
exactly. So this is the thing, right? So the ask of the or the wielders of the divine feminine is that shadow work to look at where are you being manipulated through your grievances, and
Yes,
why do you have
because
those
you are.
grievances, right? Yeah.
Because you are. And when I mentioned earlier that, like, the second summit, I'm not even
Hmm.
through the first one yet, but the
Right.
second one that I'm putting together because I'm feeling it
Hmm.
is which is rage. And then the second part to that is transmuting it into action
Right.
because it's important to channel that energy, which is a very high and powerful energy, into action that is necessary. Not, I'm going to fight back and kick your ass, like, sure, okay, fine. And then what? What do you do after that? What's the purpose of
Right.
that? What have you won? What was your prize? Right? Like, let's not continue to buy into that illusion. Ass kicking is not the point. It's taking back your personal power so you can realize fully who you are
Right.
and get those experiences, get that learning, have that wisdom. If you ever want to stop the endless rebirth cycles, if you ever want to start not coming on this planet, blowing it up, of course, is one way, but it will only be
Yeah.
recreated elsewhere, as has happened before. Um, so that's not really going to do it for you. So
Right.
if you want school to be out, if you want
Mm,
school to be done for you, then you got to do some work. I'm
right.
dispelling these illusions, stepping out of them and just saying, you know what? That is crock shit. I'm not doing that anymore. No, let's not do that. This is your path. And shadow work it is every door you open,
Mm,
there is going to be a sign right behind it saying, yo, this way to your shadow work. And there's so much of it. Pick one. Just start there. What is it that you least want to look at? That's a great place to start.
yeah.
And typically, it's something that you have protected yourself from that's you, right? So, your story about why you did certain things or your responses or your reactions, they are different to events. And what's your excuse for that? So, for example, I haven't mentioned anti-Semitism in ages,
Mm,
but notice that the social justice warriors wearing their keffiyehs, who are screaming for death to all Jews, basically, where are they on the subject of Iran? An awful lot of them aren't saying anything. How interesting. It was never about freedom then, was it? It was, that's not the point. It's the millennia old story of anti-Semitism. So there was an illusion right there. That was an untruth where somebody's got using a particular channel for their hatred, for their vengeance against people they haven't even met. Why? Why would you other a group? Right? Like it doesn't make sense, and yet we keep doing it. People keep buying into that illusion.
well,
It's a
that's the thing,
misuse
right?
of power, and you're
Yes.
contributing to it when you do that. And you know you've contributed to it. You have that truth staring at you, and maybe you're shoving it down and hiding it in a corner somewhere. But the truth of what you were really doing shows up when you look at things like events in Nigeria, people that are being slaughtered there.
Mm,
You look at Iran, very big and in your face there. Look at Yemen, Syria. There are so many places where things are happening that are appalling, and yet nobody makes any noise about it. So if you're making noise about one place, ignoring the others, you might say, I'm too tired, I don't have bandwidth, whatever it is, but there's your shadow work, because what is it really?
right.
And
You know what?
why?
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought up an African country because this is interesting. I didn't hear all of Mark Carney's speech to the UN or whatever to Davos, but if I understand the highlights correctly, one of the things is he acknowledges how Canada had basically went along, right, with what the United States was doing and their things they were doing, and now they're just tired of it. But it's like African countries are always a great example of never getting covered whenever there's, unless there's something like really, really like, I don't even know what the word to use there. It's just a lot of the stuff, the conflicts there that basically the European powers and the Western powers in general, like I'm not just singling out Europe, basically caused this harmony, and then right, the people who live in the country are set there to left to pick up the pieces. The more that it's obvious that it's a Western power that caused the problem, the less coverage you're going to get.
Sure. The other thing is there's this prevailing attitude of, well, it's Africa, what do you expect?
Right.
Which is, again, who decided that? Where did that come from? We have this whole thing about the first person was in Africa, right? If you're not
Mm,
doing the religious thing of the Garden of
right.
Eden, then you're looking at this, we came out of Africa. So wouldn't you think if you thought that was your origin, that you might be a little more interested in its welfare? And yet,
Right.
who is? Well, there's no oil, right? So who's looking at
Mm,
that? It's this misuse of power again.
right.
Why would you value this black sticky substance over a human being's life? It's
Right.
but also you're screaming about perceived outrages in one place and
Hmm.
completely ignoring where they're actually happening in others.
Yes. And that's where the manipulation comes in. That's where the disbalance comes in
And that's where
because,
the shadow work is. That is
right.
a place of shadow work anyway. What is your part in that and why? Why do you choose it? Because it is a choice. And you will curate for yourself what you're willing to listen to and what you're not. If somebody argues with you and says, well, anti-Semitism
Mm,
is wrong, and telling people that Israel shouldn't exist is in fact anti-Semitism. Of course it is. It's the only country in the world where Jews can actually live and not be under threat. So how are you not threatening Jews? But if you are really bought into that lie, then you're going to have a whole bunch of stories that you actually need to sort of look at and say, well, is that true though? And is that true? And you can hold multiple opinions at one time. You don't have to have it's all this, it's all that. Like those who voted for the current incumbent in the US, those who voted for that person, I know of some who said, well, I've always voted Republican, therefore.
mm,
That is an abdication of responsibility. You didn't
yes.
use your brain. You didn't use your experience, your knowledge, like you abdicated at the most important time. Why?
Right.
Because your dislike of the other people, which again, examine that. How can you dislike, 168 million or whatever it is, based on their preferences? It doesn't make sense. All of these things are just layers and layers of holodeck stuff. It's like,
Right.
how is that? Why are we still doing it? We do it because we can't see it. Why can't we see it? We haven't done the shadow work.
Right.
It's going to be a lot to
Yeah.
unpack from this episode.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like this episode has a lot in it that's very much like because like I hope everything landed right, like because we kind of hit on it, right? Like it's the you have to do the shadow work because you have to accept the part that you played in the way things have turned out,
Yeah, and here's a crucial piece. I got to butt in and add this.
right?
This is not about admitting you were wrong,
Right.
right? I don't care to hear it. I don't know if anybody else does. It doesn't matter. The point is for you to understand why you did what you did, how you got there,
Right.
and what do you want to do moving forward. So, saying, well, I didn't think it was going to go that way and I'm wrong. Okay, that invites
Mm,
the people who are the opposite to that, who have their own power struggles, right? That invites them to condemn you for having been wrong in the first place, right?
Yes.
The graciousness is lacking. People aren't going to say, "Okay, glad that you figured that out. That's was really good for you," kind of thing. No, no, people aren't going to say that. And it adds to the problem. Don't let that stop you from your shadow work. Right? Your
Right.
shadow work is for you, it's for your benefit. Nobody else gets to judge it. And that's another thing where people are so worried about what this person's going to think. Those people are going to say, "Who cares? It doesn't matter." If you're going to argue with me on something, okay, you can do your thing, and if you make some good points, I'll consider them because I only have what I have.
Right.
There's so much more. Like, I change my mind. Of course I do. At least I would hope I'm open enough to do that because I'm doing my shadow work.
Mm.
Does it mean I got everything down? No, of course not. We're in school. That's the whole
Right.
point.
Yeah. And I also want to add on from the magical perspective, it's there's downloads and stuff waiting for you if you do your shadow work.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
downloads, there's paths, there's new things to work with if you're willing to do the shadow work. But it needs you to do the shadow work. You can't access it without the shadow work.
And that speaks to what I said earlier
Yeah.
about, your opportunities are the other side of what you fear.
Hmm.
And typically, what you fear, you might immediately start thinking of external things that you fear. What is it about yourself first, right?
Right.
Because we've had a lot of finding out recently. We've done the FAFO and we're doing the
Mm.
finding out. Like one of the examples, given I mentioned anti-Semitism a few times today, but
Hmm.
I've been good. I haven't been mentioning it a lot. Um, but one of the examples there just literally flew away on a thread. It'll come back.
Yeah. Well, it's because I wanted to say this. You're allowed to mention anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism has a very unique quality to it. One, it's the word Semite is a racist term. It describes everyone in the region, right? So just to dissect it, it got isolated for Jewish people only, but technically, Palestinians are Semites. So no matter what you do in that region, everything is anti-Semitic, technically. Now I get it, language evolves, but it's also complicated in that there's a legit grievance and there's also weaponized grievance in the same thing at the same time, which is why you get a lot of anti-Semitism at the same time because people get grievances and grievances pile up. So it's actually interesting. What do you call it? Just academically speaking, it's incredibly interesting to dissect it. Like there's a lot of shadow work that can be done just around that topic, and it
Tremendously so. Yeah.
and it offers a lot. Again, this is why I don't say anything because also I know I being aware of your flow, I understand what comes from your flow, that there's no malice. So to me, it's not an issue for you mentioning it on the podcast because it's a topic that allows for a lot of growth.
I believe so too. And it came back to me. So
Mm.
obviously you did need to say that at that moment.
Right.
Um, and the whole thing is the people who say, they learn their history and they're shocked by what happened in the
Mm.
Holocaust. And, oh, I would never have stood by while that happened. I would never have participated. I would
Yeah.
never have da 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 da. Fabulous. You're at a perfect time of modern history
To find
to
out, yeah,
find out what
what
would
you
you
would have
have
done.
done? What
Yeah.
are you doing? Are you one of those people who are afraid to make public comments, for
Right.
example? Political comments. Will you not make them because you're afraid of who's going to knock on the door? Okay, that's a piece of information.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you one way or the other. I have my own compass for how I'm going to handle that. And I'm a mouthy sort of person. So
Right.
I put it out there. But that's my choice. And I'm not going to tell anybody else they need to do that. But what I am going to say is look at what you're choosing. Why? Be honest with yourself. Shadow work is about being honest and really diving into, is that true? Is that true? What else is true? And just examining where you are building these decisions from. What part of you is informing that decision? Are you letting other people tell you what you need to do? Are you
Right.
allowing other people to make you afraid? Are you allowing other people to make you step out of your comfort zone and be more visible than you want to be?
Right.
Why? The question in all of this is not, well, you're wrong and you got to do it differently. No, no, no. I don't want that responsibility, and nor could I. I don't have bandwidth for that shit. But
Mm.
literally, it's for yourself. Where is that coming from? What part of you, what stories have you embedded in yourself that create your response to this? The whole point is we're an experiment on this planet, right? We're learning, we develop our perception of who we are starting in childhood using experiences that we've had, and we make it mean something, and then we build
Right.
ourselves from that. So where is it? Where is your decision making? Where are you coming from? There's your shadow work. It's
Yeah.
another place to look at, right? And it's so cool because there's so much of it. We are complex creatures. We've got lots going on. Your
Yeah.
magic becomes more clear, and the path just like it opens wide. It's like, parting of the Red Sea. Let's go with that one, which
Yeah.
the whole thing about Reed Sea. But anyway, parting of the Red Sea. There you go. There's your pathway. Boom. And the more work you do, the more that happens for you.
It's funny because as you're saying that, I felt that happen.
Hmm.
Like things got whatever obstacles moved out of the way, and then it was just this big field of where the flow came through unobstructed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, shadow work is the thing. So, for the listener, again, shadow work is truly looking at, with as much honesty as you can find, what the parts of you that you don't like, the parts of you that you hide, what's happening there? Where did it come from? What's it doing? The things that you do, the things that you think, the responses you have, the stories you carry,
Mm.
the things that you believe about yourself, the the nonsense that other people have given you that you've taken on as being true, all of that are places to do your shadow work. And as you unlock those stories, as you get rid of the burdens that you're carrying about them, you have much more capacity. Then you can really, your magic is just like, whew, you are sparkling,
Right.
baby. You got sparklers coming out of your fingers. You know,
Yeah.
it's a whole new approach, and you will up level in a way that's going to surprise you.
Yeah. That's true. Like the more of the negative you set aside, or I don't even want to say it that way because, right, this is the problem of like,
You resolve.
right, because, you know, when you're at A, right, that beginning part, and you still have all these things that are weighing you down, and then you get to B, where you shed pretty much most of it, the gap between A and B is huge. And again, there it's hard to explain it backwards because until you get that understanding, it's hard to explain. You can do your best and you can do throw whatever tidbits and tell whatever stories you can to make it happen. That's why stories are so important because we tell stories for the very important reason of it takes the listener or the audience out of themselves because you're using completely made up thing and you're presenting ideas where their defenses aren't up.
And it gives an image
Right.
of the thing you're trying to express in a way that people can receive.
Right.
If you look at Himalayan Buddhism, for
Mm.
example, Mahayana Buddhism, that's the place where you go for all the mandalas and the paintings, rich
Mm.
paintings. The temples are full of paintings. Why? Because most of the people that this is for don't read.
Right.
They need the stories in picture form, basically. These are picture books, and they're in depth, and they're very rich. It's not an ABC picture book,
Mm.
but the lamas, the monks, they're gonna tell stories based on those pictures. And the stories can be different depending on who's listening,
Right.
right? You need different stories in different places. I once got booted out of religion class when I was doing A-level comparative religions in the
Mm.
UK. And I did it because it was so easy for me.
Right.
And it was interesting just to see what was going on. And I asked a question about
Mm.
the New Testament.
Right.
And I can't remember the precise example. I remember how it went down though, which is on one page, Jesus is saying, it's like the eye for the eye, tooth for the tooth kind of
Right.
thing. Wasn't exactly that, but I'll use that example. And then 3 pages later, he's saying, turn the other cheek. And it's like, okay, which is it? There's two very, very different approaches here. How is that working out? And at the time, I didn't have an answer for it. Now I do, but then I didn't. So I asked the teacher who told me to shut up and stop
Mm.
asking stupid questions and leave the classroom now. So that's her shadow work.
Mm.
If she's still around, do a little work on that girl. Um, but the thing is,
Yeah.
on the first page of the two, those people needed that response in that moment. And on the second page, those people needed that response in the moment, and both can be true. Like that's the
Right.
point, is stories can develop and alter depending on the audience. It's not the same as lying. It's giving a different perspective. And that's a very different thing from lying, right? So
Yeah.
stories are so important. If you have it written down in a book, it is what it is, what it is, and
Mm.
everybody gets the same information.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it for the person, truly communicating to the person you're with, your story changes a little.
Yes.
At least the emphasis.
Well, yes, there is that as well, right?
Hmm.
Like we said before, right? A comedian changes their joke because of their audience. The audience doesn't have to change for the joke.
Hmm.
A
That's an
good comedian
excellent
will look,
example.
yeah, a comedian will look at who their audience is and adapts their jokes to make them laugh and not expect the audience to then go into like, take their mindset. They offered it instead in the mindset of the perceived mindset of the audience.
And I mean, you can try, but it'll fall flat,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's the thing. So there's a natural flow here, and if you try and make the flow go your way, doesn't work. There's so many examples of
Mm.
this. I think what we've offered out today has been
Mm.
a lot of layers for people to look at and say, well, okay, in what way is that an illusion? Because everything that we got going on is, but in what way?
Yes. Well, that's the thing, right? Our perception of stuff is our own personal illusion.
Yeah. Well, truth is, you see that's the thing about the word truth. It's a great word. It's also a bullshit word at the same
Mm.
time, right? Because what is true? Well, you have a whole bunch of truths that I probably don't share,
Mm.
and vice versa. And that's fine. We're all like it. The where we get into a problem is where we think everybody else has to agree with us,
Right.
or their truth must be the same. I think I mentioned in the previous episode this coach that I came across who is,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
rabidly Christian.
Mm.
And I'm totally going to use those words,
Mm.
rabidly Christian, and very sort of a whole bunch of things that I normally would not have as a sort of set of criteria for somebody I'm
Right.
spending time with. And I decided, well, the thing is, I don't need to let any of that bother me because that's not how I interact with that person.
Right.
So they can have their truths and fully believe them, like absolutely immersed. Holy smokes, no room for anything else, right? Absolutely. Okay. I make zero attempt to change any of that because, first of all, it's not my role, it's not my responsibility, and it's not my interest. But I can interact with that person from whatever shared truths we have,
Yes.
whatever shared understandings that we have. And that's fine. That works. The problem is when we try and change each other's truths. Again,
Right.
illusion, waste of time. Don't need to do it.
Yeah, that part is very important because if you get mixed up in the ideology versus the what the person's actually doing with the ideology, Some
Yeah.
ideologies are purely for hate, but not everything. Like I'm trying to think about this. So let's say a movement uses a lot of talking points about being peaceful and loving and stuff like that, but really at their core they're hateful. But a lot of their followers are probably going to be peaceful because it's that story that they use to bring them in, you know,
And it
that's
depends. I
appealing.
mean, you could use Christianity for that because there's a lot of extremely
Yes, it's a
hateful
good
Christians,
example. Like,
and there's a lot of
actually,
people who
yeah,
believe it, right?
right,
Who live it.
and they do a lot of good things, but that doesn't affect the fact that a lot of people who are in power in that place are still doing very corrupt things. They're still, skirting even the
Yeah,
rules that they proposed. But it doesn't mean what those people were doing, themselves doesn't mean that they're not doing good stuff.
because the
Right.
people in power are typically the ones who are corrupt enough to be in power.
Right.
This it's a rare thing to have somebody in that position who isn't utterly corrupt. It kind of goes with the territory. It doesn't have to go with the territory, but it's easy to go with the territory.
Right.
So there's been a whole thing in the US recently about a pastor of a very large church who
Oh
also
yeah.
happens to be the acting head of ICE in
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
local field position,
Hmm.
in Minneapolis, in St. Paul. Well, how do you reconcile those two? I'm here to hear that one. Like, you tell me how you're a pastor of a church and the head of ICE at the same time. Like, that is, wow. That person has so much shadow work to do. They'd better start now because it's going
Mm.
to take a while, right? The
Yeah.
things that you have to convince yourself of to be able to hold those two positions simultaneously and face people and spout your stuff, right? In the church, you're going to tell people about being loving at the same time
Yeah.
as you are causing others to suffer is mind blowing to me. It's one of the most stark examples currently of wow. And to defend it, to attempt to defend it means that that person has convinced themselves that this position is acceptable.
Hmm.
Woo! You want to talk about layers of illusion, layers of self manipulation, if you will?
Right.
Like, how could it be other than? I'm here to hear that one. Like, tell it to me. Like, how did that work out? Because wow, and there's a case of somebody saying, "Oh, it's all Jesus and God and what have you, and we're going to lock up 5-year-olds." Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it just there's a lot of shadow work in that space.
It is, I want to use the case of Renee Good for a
Hmm.
second here. So, an interpretation of what you see, right? Like the cell phone camera that the ICE officer had would lead you to believe he at least got nudged, right? But every other angle shows you that he didn't get hit. At best, he got nudged by the side of the car, not directly front on. But no matter how many angles you see, people still push the idea that she tried to run him over. Even though while they were talking, you could see her turning the wheel to avoid him.
Right,
Like, even though that footage on his own phone shows you her trying to avoid him, because he gets jostled or drops his camera or switches his hands, whatever makes it look like he dropped the camera, people still use that part, but not the rest of the video, to
right.
say it was justified. But then even justifying it, like,
Shadow work.
right, like a lot of shadow work, like a lot,
It's
a
a
lot, a
lot of
lot.
shadow work because here's a question that the same
Mm,
people are not asking, which
right,
is why is an armed man trying to block the path of an unarmed woman in a vehicle. Why
right.
are you even doing that? She had done nothing incorrect, she'd done nothing illegal, and there are processes for that, which
Hmm.
do not involve standing in front of her vehicle. And
Right.
you can see she's trying to move away. So, in what way is gun violence justified? Then the recent reports show it wasn't the first bullet that killed her, it wasn't the
No.
second, it was the third.
Right.
So this is intent to kill. This is not trying to stop her
Yes.
getting away,
You
right? So
know,
there's that. And then the ultimate one of calling her a fucking bitch
yeah,
audibly on his own phone after he
right,
has killed her and refusing medical help. So
yeah,
every single action of that person was aimed toward one end, which was that she dies. And I cannot express how strongly calling her a fucking bitch has
mm,
ignited women across
right,
the globe. This
hmm,
was absolutely the touchstone that this person did. And something I'm curious about too that nobody seems to be asking is this guy was whisked off to, a safe house kind of thing with his
yeah,
immigrant wife and children.
right, yes.
Has anybody checked on them? This guy is clearly not safe. Has anybody checked on them? Are they okay? Like,
My argument from having worked in places where, like, having worked in a place where we did do family therapy, they're not safe, would be my
no, of
guess.
course they're not. How could they be safe? He killed a woman and called her a fucking bitch. What does that tell you about his approach to women? He didn't have a personal grudge against her, other than that she showed she wasn't afraid of him. So that tells you that the woman that he got whisked away with,
Mm,
this immigrant woman, is in danger. Her kids are in danger. And nobody's even looking at it.
right.
This guy's not only a murderer, he's a misogynist. So this
Yeah.
isn't being looked at, and he has a bucket load of shadow work to do. But not only that, I mean, that's clear and obvious,
Mm,
but all the people who are trying to justify his actions, baby, you have a whole like tunnel work of
right.
stuff to do. Because how do you arrive at that conclusion? Why do you arrive at that conclusion? Why is it necessary for you to believe that he had some level of justification? He didn't even
Right.
have justification for pulling
No.
a gun on her.
Well, that's the
He
other one,
shouldn't have
right?
been in front of a damn vehicle for a kickoff.
Right.
Like
And
he had no right.
he trains people for these things.
Yes, I saw that too. But he had no right at any stage in that process to be where he was doing what he was doing. None. She had
Right.
done nothing. There was no accusation against her, no warrant.
Right.
There was nothing. He
Well, I mean,
just
they're trying to
implied,
fabricate the reasoning, but
of course. And if you can see any substance to anything that's been fabricated, again, have a look at that. Really? Do you
but
honestly believe
right.
this?
But
How?
what I found interesting and asked another question that's not being asked. I've seen some people who are like in defense of her, right, asking this question, but the people who are against her, against this whole thing, who are for the ICE agent, one of the questions I've never seen asked was nothing they're bringing up, even the accusations, justifies him shooting her in the face 3 times. None of it. Like none of them, nothing they're bringing up, abuse of the children, all that kind of stuff, or being an agitator, necessitates being shot in the face. But
He shot her in the arm,
yeah,
the breast, and then the face.
right. And it's this was actually yesterday. I was watching a video, and a defense attorney was talking about it, and she said I could probably, with some convincing, get him off on the first shot, but those other 2 shots, you can't justify them. The first one, you could play with the system enough to get to seed some doubt, but the other 2 bullets, there's no justification for them, even legally. There's no
That,
police procedural. There's nothing in the system that allows the other 2 shots. The first one,
correct.
you can play on sympathies and you can do a lot of manipulation, but the other two, there's nothing legally as a lawyer that you could do to defend the client.
Right. And frankly, if anybody's got sympathy for ICE right now, please do your shadow work. I would love for you to figure out why people who are just
Mm,
snatching people out of their homes, their cars, and the street with zero knowledge of who they are or why they're snatching them, and they're taking children. And we don't see these people again. They are being trafficked.
mm,
Now, is that a leap? Yes, it is. But for the person who says, "Where's your evidence?" Human trafficking doesn't usually have evidence until much later.
right.
But
Until
the
after.
fact that they are
Mm,
being taken and they disappeared, that that Homeland Security said we are not responsible for sexual assault happening in detention centers.
Yes.
Explain this to me. Tell me how this is a good thing for the country, how this is a safety aspect. And the thing is, there are people who still say this. I know someone I used to work with who I saw post a thing saying, I'm not afraid of ICE because I've done nothing wrong.
Mm,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Head firmly up ass. Like that is, yes, I am judging that one because I am human and I do that
Mm,
sometimes. And this is one I'm absolutely judging. How can you be that blind? How can you arrive at that conclusion? This is one of those things that I don't have the interest to hear everybody's
mm.
um
Well, you
version
can't.
of how they get there,
Yeah.
but I would love for those people to really look at why are you saying this? What does it mean to you to be able to say that and stand by it? Like,
I'm
how
actually
did you
glad you
get
worded it that way. I'm glad you worded it that way because I want people like, because if you're someone who is like, usually very open-minded and very fair and want everyone to have their day, to say their side, it's exhausting. And you have to kind of sit back and go, okay, I have my limit to what I can hear.
there?
And you have to say, maybe there's someone else out there who can hear what you have to say, but have already my, I already have my capacity filled up. My stadium is full of people who I'm listening to.
Also, I have other work to do.
Right,
And again, we're back to the distraction, right? Like you
right.
could go down that rabbit hole
Mm-hmm.
of the subject we've just been t talking about, which is an important subject. And I wouldn't say that we're here to ignore these things because
Right,
that's not the case either. It's just what will you do with this information? What will your action be? I mean, to me, the response to the slaughter of Rene Good
right.
is rage. Of course it
Mm,
is, because it symbolizes so much, as well as a senseless loss of life and a 6-year-old that doesn't have mom. You
mm.
know, like w- there's so much that comes up from that. So what are you going to do with it? What is your course of action? What do you want to see? And when I'm working with parents of kids with autism, the behaviors that happen, I often say
Mm.
to the parents, it's not about telling them to stop. It's about giving them the information of what else do you want to see? What would you like them to do differently? How do you want the outcome to be different?
Right.
Explain that to your
Mm.
child. Well, we need this for adults these days too. What do you want to see that's different? Where will your action take you? And are you okay with that? Are you congruent with it? Do your shadow work and figure it out.
Yeah. Like that's the big lesson. Do your shadow work because that's what's going to make you available for everything else that's set into motion right now.
And it will affect what you do, the path you set on. It will affect the one that you choose or end up on by default, which is still a choice. It's a very poor choice because you abdicated your responsibility
Mm,
with when you don't make a decision, but
right.
you're on a path. So better to know as much as you can about why you're on it and where you expect to end up.
Hmm.
Like what are you working towards? What are you anticipating? I'm all about people getting awareness going, for example. Understand that you have a responsibility, understand what you're doing, understand your role, and then make a decision from there. Are you good with
Right.
that? Are you happy where you're at? Are you getting the results you want? If you're not, you're doing something that give you the results you're getting. What do you want to do differently?
Yeah. You know, because of being asked to talk about this. Another magic I did this week, or one of the spells, was about putting things out there to restore the sense of wonder in the world. The way it was presented to me was, yeah, there's really shitty stuff going on right now, but you know what? There's still sunrises. There's still these rare flowers that exist in these, regions. The water is still crystal clear. There's still crystal clear water. People still fall in love. People are born. All these things in life that make life living. That's still out there.
Hmm.
Don't
That's
pull away.
grounding.
Right. Don't pull away from that just because. someone disagrees with you or there's shitty things going on because these things will pass. All things pass, right? We go periods of darkness,
Mhm.
periods of brightness, periods of darkness, and they all serve their purpose and they go on. So one of the things, if you're going to be someone called to do the restorative work right now, you have to retain your sense of wonder for yourself so you can really work and believe in what you're doing.
You know what? I love that you said that because we do have this opportunity on this planet right
Mm.
now, and it's not all about recognizing everything that's awful.
Right.
It's about self-work, which is, shadow work is a whole lot of it, so you
Mm.
make good decisions or decisions you're congruent with, and grounding, being
Hmm.
in touch with the world. This is what witchcraft is about. Witchcraft is being in nature, getting the wonder of just spring. Is spring not a most remarkable thing? And
Right.
yet we ignore winter, but you need winter before you get spring.
Hmm.
So what are you missing in winter? What are you missing that's important? Like right now, we have this Arctic blast going across
Right.
the part of the country that I'm in. Well, no, I don't like being cold. So I dress in a way that makes me not cold. What I appreciate about it, though, is it keeps the mosquito population down in the summer.
Hmm.
It does things in nature that we need in order to keep a balance. If you have no winter at all, well, if you have no winter when you normally do get winter, now your
Hmm.
ecosystem just got screwed up
Right.
because things need to happen in winter. Just like when you have forest fires, you need them in order to regenerate the woods, right? New seeds will grow.
Right.
Forest fires are only a problem
Mhm.
because people are in the way.
That's right.
But they're not a problem from the Earth's perspective. Look at the animals that survive against all odds because we're in the way.
Hmm.
Look at the remarkable things that nature has for us and that we typically abuse, which is unfortunate. But if you can manage not to, if you can step out of that for a
Right.
minute, just appreciate it for what it is. You said on a previous episode, you
Mm.
quoted the if you like a flower, you pick it. If
Right.
you love a flower, you let it grow.
Hmm.
Nature. This is being in touch with this. Witchcraft is all about being in touch with
Mm.
nature. It's all about interacting with your environment. Don't lose that. The shadow work doesn't take you away from it, it just makes you more honest with it.
Right. Yeah. It's probably a good way to end the episode on the when you're doing your shadow work, really to also take time to appreciate all the wonderful things in life because that's what's going to give you that motivation to do the healing that needs to be done right now.
Yeah, and healing doesn't have to be painful. I need to
No.
put that out there. I do trauma work with some of my clients, and it does not involve reliving the trauma. In fact, it exactly doesn't involve that
Mm.
because when you relive the trauma, your brain thinks you're in it again, and
Hmm.
your body experiences everything it experienced before. That's not only wildly unnecessary, but it actually totally unhelpful to figuring that out. It's what I said right at the beginning of the
Mm.
episode, where you look at it as where is the learning from here,
Hmm.
and how can I acknowledge that what it took for me to get this lesson was curated and people, souls agreed to help. It
Right.
wasn't, it's not all everything's against me, everything's bad. So trauma work does not have to be painful. In fact, if it is, you're doing it wrong. It's not painful. It's a release. It's not a beat yourself up first. So shadow work, likewise. If you can be honest with yourself, if you love yourself and trust yourself, or at least are working on that,
Hmm.
then shadow work doesn't have to be painful. It's illuminating. But, get yourself out of the way. Get the ego
Yes.
out of the way. That would be my recommendation.
Right.
And enjoy nature. Yes, enjoy your
Mm.
environment. Appreciate it. People who
Yeah.
hate rainy days. Well, you're not going to grow anything if you don't have them. Like
That's
shift your
right.
perspective.
Yeah, I have this conversation every winter actually. Or usually it'll come up during winter especially if there's like a very light winter, I'll be like, oh, man, we need more snow, we need more snow, we need more snow. And people are like, why? Never mind, it's pain in the ass enough. And I'm like, well, first of all, because it snow is precipitation.
Hmm.
And when it starts to melt, it goes into the ground. And because of where I live, right? Like I live in bear country, right? And we have signs everywhere. You're in bear country, like be careful what you do. Well, if there's enough snow in the winter, enough plants grow, and then enough plants grow that keeps the animals in the forest instead of coming into town. And so therefore, we're in bear country, the bears stay in the forest if there's enough
Yeah,
precipitation.
we have bears here too, and
Right.
mountain lions,
Mm-hmm.
and every now and then you see them in town.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very helpful if nature does its thing and keeps them out of town.
that's
Um,
right.
Again, we're kind of in the way, but at the same time, we can coexist if things
Mm-hmm.
trickle along nicely, you know. But the thing that you're complaining about is
Mm.
probably helpful,
Right.
and that's something. Shift your perspective is an offering I would like to make. It doesn't alter the situation; it just alters what you're getting from it.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That's why truth can have so many layers to it. Many things can be true at once because the central event is the central event, and it is what it is.
Hmm.
But what you get out of that central event, or what you learn from that central event, that's where the layers kick in.
Yeah. Okay. One more thing came to me that
All right.
I'll put out as an offering. There
Mm-hmm.
is a system used in a certain branch of life coaching that I'm
Mm-hmm.
also certified in, and it's called the model. Great, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the usual name. But what you begin with is the circumstance or the
Right.
event. The thing that goes into that first line is whatever happened that anybody anywhere in the world would agree on. So let's use this person died. Okay? Anybody in the world can look at that dead body and say, yep, dead. I see
Right.
that. Got it. So that's your circumstance. And you know it's true because everybody would agree on it no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the next line, which is your thought about that circumstance. And this is where you have the utmost diversity. Because one person might look at that dead body and say, yay, that was a totally evil person. Woohoo.
Mm.
Another person would look at that and be heartbroken because it's their relative, and a
Right.
whole range of things in between, right? Renee Good would be an example.
Right.
Everybody could agree she was killed, but do we agree on what that means? No. So the
Yeah.
thought that you have, let's stick with Renee Good for a minute. The thought that you have about her death will alter how you feel about it. Your
Mm-hmm.
emotions are different based on whether you are, you know, enraged by the slaughter of an innocent woman, whether you are satisfied that somebody who belongs to the group you don't like got theirs, you know, and the whole range in between. Your thoughts affect your feelings. Your feelings, how you respond to this, will affect your actions. What you do next is based on how you feel about it. Your actions, what you do next, are going to give you the results. And your results will typically go right the way back up the chain to thoughts, where your results will reinforce the thoughts you're having,
Right.
and off you go in a loop. This is your behavior loop. The one thing that doesn't change is the circumstance, so long as it's a clear circumstance. Everything else, if you change your thought about that, the
Yeah.
rest alters completely. This is how you break cycles. I just gave the listener some freaking gold right there because you can use this on
Yeah.
anything. So long as you're clear that your thought about that event is not in the circumstance line, you have to keep those separate. Your thought about something, your judgment of it,
Mm-hmm.
is the key part that you can change. So that's I would recommend you write that one down. That costs some money to learn that. So, you know,
Mm.
just gave you a thing.
Yeah.
But it's helpful. If you want to change what you're getting, if you want to change that result line, change your thought line.
Yeah. Well, we give away a lot of things for free on this podcast that are like
We
should be
do.
paid for. But that's part
We
of the
do. But
podcast,
you
right?
know
It's to
what?
open doors.
If the person listening is able to take this and use it, I'm happy for them. And if you're not, well, I just gave you something worthwhile.
Mm,
Your choice.
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, this is the free version of what can be learned.
Uh-huh. Yeah, people pay me for coaching and they get
Yeah.
this kind of information, but it's a little more personalized. But yes, that model
Yes.
that I just gave you, you can take that and apply it to anything that you are stuck with or want a different outcome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you can do so many options with it too. Your
Oh yeah.
question is, well, what else could I think about that? How else
Yeah.
could I look at that event? What else is true? Do you want to pick a different thought? Yeah, the more diverse it is from the original thought, the more your results will change.
Yeah. So I think the episode ends with that little bit of wisdom. You're getting stuff for free that you'd have to pay for on this podcast.
Yeah, the price of this is that you listen
Right. Right. And you know what?
and
Share
you
it, spread it
implement.
around. Yeah. Make use of it. Take action
Yep,
on it. And yeah, and that's where it is. And I'm getting, okay, you guys have said enough. All right.
loads of gold in today's. Loads of
Yeah.
gold.
Yeah. So once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
Until next time.
Until next time.